Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Maddie here. Today we have 5 of the best decks in Pokemon Pocket right now that I would be bringing to tournament play or really any other competitive format for Pokemon Pocket. The ranked battle season for the Crimson Blaze B1A season starts January 9th, so it's about a week away. We have a couple of really awesome tournaments coming, but before we get into the deck lists, I just wanted to go ahead and do a quick little channel update. I didn't release an actual video or a statement or anything going into this new year. It is 2026. Happy New Year, everybody. So I just wanted to quickly do this little intro to the video and, talk a little bit about, this channel and our community moving forward for the next year. Nothing too crazy, but you might notice, some graphical changes here in the videos. I want to update things a little bit just so that the look and the feel of the content is, just slightly different as we go into the new year and we feel a little bit more refreshed. The tournament series, the Pocket Mads tournament series will still be continuing on. In fact, you guys should definitely go and register for tomorrow's tournament if you're watching today's video. Saturday, January 3rd at noontime is PMPT 15. Definitely go register. And we're going to continue the tournament series up, throughout this entire year, hopefully. The other thing, like I said, ranked is coming out on the 9th, but the first couple of months of this sort of new season since, B1 came out has been a little bit strange, the release cycle for Pokemon Pocket. I haven't done a lot of live streams as it's been the holiday season and whatnot, so I think that once this next ranked season comes out and we have that ranked season for about 2 weeks or so, things are going to be a lot more normal in terms of how the schedule goes on the channel with our live streams and our ranked content and all of the stuff that we normally do here on the Pocket Mads channel. That'll all kind of go back to normal. I just wanted to address that because with the holiday season and everything going on, things have been a little bit different. It's just been kind of crazy. So keep in mind, nothing is really changing dramatically with the channel. I just wanted to give a quick little update saying that I'm excited to make Pokemon content, Pokemon Pocket content for the next year or so. And hopefully we just continue to grow. And, if you guys like my content, definitely subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 50,000 subscribers. And the competitive scene for Pokemon Pocket has been growing and the tournament scene is just absolutely incredible. We have over 5,000 people in the Discord now. If you want to join the Discord server, link down in the description below as well. It's a great place to come hang out. So anyway, guys, that's our intro, I guess, for today's video. Let's hop into the deck lists and let's get right into it. All right, guys, so in today's video, we're going to highlight 5 decks. I think moving forward for our Friday deck video, I'm going to be doing it like a top 5. I think that there's always, 5, 10, maybe sometimes 15 real meta decks in the format. But depending on the week and whatever decks are seeing play, I think that the viability of certain decks really does fluctuate. And it's hard to stay on top of things, especially when we're covering so many decks on the channel. So for these Friday videos moving forward, we're going to do our top 5 decks, at least for this given weekend or going into this 3rd week. In this video scenario. And then we'll do a 6th deck, which is going to be our weekly wild card, which is always something that we reserve for something that I think has potential to enter the metagame, but isn't necessarily something that is commonly played or, considered to be a real meta strategy. So anyway, let's just dive into it, guys. The first deck in today's video is going to be Mega Blaziken. A lot of people have been asking me about Mega Blaziken. We left it off of our tier list. I think at the beginning of the season with Charizard releasing, there was sort of a new, fancy fire deck that everybody was excited to play, but realistically, I think Charizard has a lot of issues with it, and I just don't think it's very well positioned for the current state of the meta. Dealing at 250 damage and having a bunch of HP is really strong, but it requires a lot of energy and a whole bunch of setup, and the big payoff isn't really worth it when you're having to KO 2, sometimes 3 Pokemon, in a match, right? If you're going up against other Mega Pokemon all of the time, Mega Charizard-wise, probably gonna be pretty strong. But I do feel like the best Fire-type deck currently is still Blaziken, and it's actually been on a pretty nice little ramp up here over the last few days. In my mind, it is the premier fire deck right now, and I think that it's kind of still in the same position it was last season as one of those premier high roll archetypes. There's really 2 high roll type decks in the game right now, and when I say high roll, I really mean decks that are, stage 2 rare candy combo decks where the stage 2 Pokemon is the actual attacking Pokemon, right? Not like things like Greninja, which, you can just sort of play on your bench and then maybe you evolve into it, maybe not. These sort of high roll decks like Hydreigon and Blaziken do require you get that attacking Pokemon evolved up with rare candy and you can attack fairly early. So even though Hydreigon, I keep calling it Hydreigon, but it's Hydreigon, I think is how you say the name. I don't know. Everybody's always going to comment how I pronounce that name, but I think that Blaziken and Hydreigon Hydreigon. Blaziken and Hydreigon are both, premier archetypes still in the meta, but they lack consistency. So, in tournament play, you're never going to see Blaziken and Hydreigon, or at least over a large enough sample size, have really high average win rates, but they're always going to be very competitively viable. And I think people are kind of recognizing that a little bit more so with Blaziken. So this is the Blaziken deck that I pulled up from a recent tournament placing that did very well. We are playing one Combusken and just double of the Tongue Whip Heatmore, double Cyrus, right? With Rocky Helmet. We have one copy Lillian here, one Flame Patch. It's very traditional, very standard Blaziken. And in my mind, this is still like a top 5 deck, at least currently in the meta. The landscape right now, which what we're going to be relating all of these decks to in today's video, is a Suicune meta. In recent online tournaments, and by the way, there's been a bunch, so shout out to everybody hosting tournaments and playing in online tournaments. The community's been popping off with no ranked battles. Suicune's operating at around a 20 to 25% meta share, which is absolutely incredible. Some of the highest we've really ever seen for Suicune. So the stocks for Suicune Greninja are very, very high. But that does not mean that it is by far the only deck worth playing. Blaziken actually traditionally has a pretty good matchup into Suicune Greninja. Again, we have high HP amount. Even though we're a Fire-type Pokemon and the hit is for weakness, the burn damage from Blaziken plus a Rocky Helmet means that we can pretty consistently KO Suicunes virtually all of the time, and then Heatmore maybe allows us to kind of target down a Froakie or something on the bench. So traditionally, Blaziken actually has a good win rate relatively into Suicune, and I think it has enough kind of power and consistency to kind of, stay relevant against a lot of this other, decks that are in the metagame. Now, besides the high roll decks, I think there's really only like one core package that is really worth playing right now, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But this is the Blaziken deck I would play. I definitely would recommend it, and I think that Blaziken is still like a really solid meta deck in the current season, and I think it probably will continue to be until we get something that kind of replaces it. The only downside of Mega Blaziken realistically is the rare candy, so if you don't draw into it, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle, but you can play double copycat and kind of bolster your consistency with things when you're going up against Suicune specifically, which is going to pile up with a bunch of cards in their hands. So shout out to Blaziken. It's kind of back, and I would kind of really consider you play it. But next up is going to be Hydreigon or Hydreigon. This is a version of Hydreigon that I really liked, so I wanted to highlight it. Now, there's a bunch of different ways that we can play it. You could play it with Chingling, you could play it with Leapover Absol. This is a version that I saw recently place well at a tournament, and I do love it. I forget the player's name that was playing this, but I saw it and I was like, you know what? I'm going to showcase this in the video because, again, other than, the particular high roll strategies, there's only really one package that I would consider playing. So if you're not playing, or if you're going to play a high roll deck, I would play Hydreigon or I would play Blaziken. Both are kind of similar, and they both just thrive going second and getting that turn 2 rare candy out. In fact, Hydreigon, even though it has a 3 energy attack cost, it actually likes to go first, and Blaziken likes to go second. So there is a little bit of a difference there, and I think that this deck list is still strong enough to compete with really anything in the meta. It's just going to have some consistency problems here. One Indeedee, one Mega Absol in the deck makes this even more high roll because these are cards that we don't really want in the active, especially early on in the game. The 2 Zangoose here is sort of our buffer. It's a leadoff Pokemon that I think can provide value, and it's also a Pokemon that we can commit energies to, right? So the counter attack ability from Zangoose allows, or I guess deals extra damage to your opponent if they attack you. So it's like it has Rocky Helmet. It's like Hydreigon back in the day, but a colorless Pokemon. And yes, it has a 2 energy attack cost for only 50 damage, but we can generally just attach energies to Zangoose like pretty freely because Hydreigon just sort of sets itself up most of the time, right? So this deck has a lot of extra energies to attach. Typically, you would attach like a Mega Absol on the bench, but there's a lot of scenarios where you really don't want to bench the Mega Absol. Mainly just because it's a target, right? It can get hit with a Greninja and then brought up with Cyrus, and then all of a sudden your opponent can just KO one single Pokemon to win the game. So Mega Absol is definitely a liability into Greninja decks, but into non-Greninja decks, it's still a valuable card, and I think there's enough of a reason to play it. But the Zangoose here is sort of that buffer. It allows a Pokemon to sit into the active spot while, we evolve up our Hydreigon and we get it set up to attack. And it's, primarily a single prize archetype here, but Zangoose is actually just a pretty relevant Pokemon. If Oricorio attacks you once, we can revenge KO it with 50, 2 energy. So if we are going second, we can attack on our second turn. We can KO baby Pokemon. It's honestly just a pretty strong deck here. We're playing double Rocky Helmet with Zangoose, so extra chip damage, and it really does kind of add up to be enough for Hydreigon to take some KOs. So I like this archetype. Again, I don't know if I would necessarily consider this to be like the top Hydreigon archetype, but it is sort of like a different example, so I wanted to show it in today's video. Definitely one of my favorites. Comment down below what you guys think of this. I still think Chingling's good. I think Leapover Absol are good inclusions for Hydreigon. The point is we just need something else else because we don't want Indeedee, Mega Absol, or even our dinos in the active spot. We really just don't want these Pokemon in the active because they require setup or they require us to use them while they're not in the active, right? The only exception, I guess, is like going second sometimes. If you lead Mega Absol, it can be pretty good, but it needs to do enough to win the game. And sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. But a really fun version of Hydreigon. I think it's still, Hydreigon's a very good card, and I still think it's relevant in the metagame. Now, the next 3 decks we're going to take a look at are all very similar because they all include one particular Pokemon that I think right now is at the very core of competitive Pokemon Pocket. The first one is going to be Altaria, and yes, the #1 version of Altaria that I would choose to play right now is going to be Greninja, and that's the card. That's what we're talking about here. Greninja you're going to see it in the next 3 decks because in my mind, if you're not playing these really strong high roll archetypes like Blaziken or Hydreigon, honestly, you're probably playing a Greninja deck list, or I guess you're maybe playing Oricorio, and you're probably going to see an absence of Oricorio here in this video because I think that there's just a weird phenomenon going on where like Oricorio Magnezone is getting beat by almost everything in the meta other than Suicune and Greninja, which it has about a 55% win rate against. All of these other decks, it's going to struggle pretty tremendously, and that's sort of an issue, I think, for the Oricorio Magnezone deck. So I do think that, by the way, any deck that we don't talk about in this video doesn't mean that it's not good or that it's not in the meta. I just chose 5 decks to focus on today to really summarize the current active metagame. So like Oricorio Magnezone is one example of that. There's plenty of other decks that are quality, but these are like the top 5 that I would play. Anyway, moving on, Mega Altaria is still a strong card. It is a very consistent card, but it's a little bit lackluster in some ways, right? The consistency is really nice, but in tournament play especially, you find yourself going up against like high roll decks that are just in general a bit stronger. And if they get lucky, they just beat you, right? Because like the consistency is nice for your average win rate and for like ranked battles if ranked were to be out right now. But in tournament play, high roll definitely tends to favor the lucky a little bit. So we want to play a deck that has a little bit more high potential, and just slapping Greninja in Altaria really adds that potential, right? Not only can we play the double Cyrus and we can choose which Pokemon we want to KO, but it also adds extra damage to Mega Altaria, which 150 is much, much better than 130 damage. So we might as well just play Froakie, Greninja, Cyrus in Altaria because the top end of the deck, the maximum potential of playing this whole combo with Altaria makes it a lot stronger. We are playing 2 copies of Chingling, so honestly, I do still really believe in Chingling. You'll notice that like Mega Blaziken, Hydreigon, Greninjas are everywhere. So if you can play Chingling, I would play Chingling in your deck list. I know the Hydreigon deck we just showcased is not playing Chingling, but I would play Chingling or a counter Chingling strategy like Fur or Zangoose or something like that. Yeah, Altaria can play Chingling pretty easily, and that's a big reason why I think Altaria and Chingling can be paired really well with Greninja. But you also got to keep in mind that Altaria is not affected by Chingling, right? Because it's not a rare candy Pokemon. So typically Altaria would have the benefit of not getting counterplayed by Chingling and being able to utilize Chingling, but it's sort of abandoned that strength over the last few weeks, and now people are just kind of playing it with Greninja, and I think that's probably fine. Honestly, that's just sort of this is the premier way to play Altaria, and it is a little bit unfortunate because I think all archetypes are really boiling down to just playing Greninja Cyrus, but that's the metagame right now, and until we see a counterplay to Greninja, that's just the reality of it. So this is the version of Altaria that I would play. Again, you could play the Indeedee version, you could play the Furfrou version, you could play whatever version you want. You could even play with Magnezone, but I don't think any of them are going to be as competitively viable as just playing with Greninja, honestly. And that's just what the metagame has kind of come down to at this point. And next up here, very similarly, is going to be Mega Absol or Dark Greninja. And that's again, this is where we're at. We're literally just throw Greninja in your decks, and you're probably going to be more successful. This is my favorite way to play Greninja if you're not playing it with Suicune. I think the Altaria deck is like a little bit more awkward, but this deck list here is phenomenal. It's a little bit more reliant on the Chingling lead, like the Darkrai attachments with Chingling and Rocky Helmet means that you can beat other Chinglings really easily, and that allows you to get into your Greninja before your opponent can, and then you can leverage that. So this is a deck list that I really love. We're playing 1 red card. You could play 1 Mars specifically for the Suicune matchup. We're not playing any middle evolutions here. We are playing 1 X speed in case we do lead Mega Absol, and unfortunately, if you lead Darkrai EX, you're probably going to lose the game. That is the downside to this deck list. However, I do think it is worth to play Darkrai, specifically, like I said, for the Chingling head-to-head matchup. If you lead Chingling, your opponent leads Chingling, we have Darkrai and we have Rocky Helmet, and that allows us to basically KO our opponent's Chingling before they can KO us, and that allows us to, drop their item lock, go into our Greninjas, and then control the game from there. That's the entire concept with this deck, and I really do think it's quite strong. its matchups into Suicune Greninja have been a little bit awkward, realistically. In fact, all of these decks have really awkward matchups into Suicune Greninja, but people have almost abandoned the old, like the entire average win rate perspective of these deck lists, because as long as your deck can beat Suicune Greninja, that's seemingly sort of the totally fine aspect of the deck, right? If you have a 46% win rate into Suicune, people are like, whatever, you know what I mean? I'll just roll the dice. Again, I'm either playing Suicune Greninja or playing something else. So maybe when ranked comes out, that'll be a bit different, right? If people are playing Suicune Greninja 50% of their games, they might just play a deck that is sort of a hard counter to it. But in tournament play, it's really hard to do that with so many other strong decks in the metagame. You really don't want to like hard counter or hard lose to anything. You'd rather play a deck that has, you know, the ability to beat any deck that you might be going up against. And these Greninja decks are just that, right? They're basically like high roll strategies that you can kind of pack into any archetype. So I still think Mega Absol's strong. It's a very splashable card. In fact, I would rather play this version of like an Absol Darkrai deck than like Hydreigon personally, but you know, Hydreigon is what it is as well. So yeah, I mean, there you go. And then again, the fifth deck that we're going to talk about today, realistically, is Suicune and Greninja. So we can't make this video without talking about it. Again, the meta shares for Suicune and Greninja have been absolutely ridiculous. It's been crazy to see how dominant Suicune and Greninja's been, like at this stage of the meta. And I think at this point, like I said, people are they're just over it. They just don't care anymore. And when you take a look at all of the decks in the meta, like the only decks that are specifically extremely strong into Suicune and Greninja are decks that are really volatile in other matchups, right? You could play Decidueye, you could play, you know, you could play like Stokesard or something like that. Even like some of the aggro lightning type decks, which have really good matchups into Suicune and Greninja, really struggle into other stuff. Venusaur is another example of a deck that just has a really good win rate into Suicune, but struggles in a lot of other things. It's a whole other aspect of the meta. So all of those decks that I just mentioned are probably relevant in the metagame just because they have really good matchups into Suicune and Greninja, and because so many people are playing Suicune and Greninja, but that's not really the reflection of the metagame, and it's a hard thing to sort of understand. And again, I really think it just sort of boils down to people accepting the fact that, you know, they're okay with playing Suicune and Greninja, or just playing other high roll decks that just have the potential to beat them, right? I think people have kind of abandoned the counter meta strategy here. Again, Oricorio Magnezone has been sometimes doing really well, sometimes struggling. It just depends on what matchups they hit in tournaments. So, you know, it's one of those things. Again, maybe next week when ranked comes out, the meta will shift and the way that people kind of look at the metagame will be a lot different. But for now, people are just sort of fully enveloped in the whole Greninja stuff, and they've just accepted it. So I know some people might not love that. There are some exceptions. That's why I included Blaziken and Hydreigon if you didn't want to play Greninja. But the options are few and far between. So my recommendation would be to either play Suicune Greninja, play another strong package that can incorporate the Greninja package, or just play some really generic high-powered, like high-roll strategy like Blaziken or Hydreigon and hope it kind of works out for you. Again, the lightning stuff, we didn't cover any lightning decks in this video. All of them are like, okay, like I don't have a great read on how quality I think any of them are. I think Oricorio Magnezone is totally fine. I think that the Jolteon decks are totally fine. Magnezone in general is a good card, but it's just a little bit awkward. Like, it's splashable just like Greninja is, but you would rather, I think, just play Greninja in any of these other archetypes than you would Magnezone. Like, that's sort of my read right now on the meta. Like, you can play Magnezone with Absol, you can play with Altaria, you can play with Lopunny, you can play with whatever. But I think that if you're going to play those other packages, just throw Greninja in instead of Magnezone, and you're probably gonna have a little bit more of a benefit, honestly. Yeah, you know, that's my forecast for the meta. These are my top 5 decks right now, and that's sort of how I'm interpreting the metagame. We'll see how this sort of all pans out this weekend. There's a couple of really large tournaments. Like I said, we have the PMPT 15 tournament, which is going to be tomorrow at noon. Definitely go and register for that. $300 cash in the prize pool. But there's various other tournaments this weekend that are going to be really large, which is a really good thing. I want to let that be known. I'm really happy that there's so many large tournaments seeing play, because it's good for the metagame, it's good for the competitive scene of Pokemon Pocket, and it's good for the players. So definitely come out and compete in any tournament that you can make it. It definitely helps the game, and it's a really good thing for sure. So go and register, link down in the description below, and we'll see what the results are this weekend. I would not be surprised if Suicune and Greninja ended up winning, because at large tournaments, what happens is like decks that are seeing a lot of play end up also having high conversion rates because they're just quality decks. So, you know, if Suicune and Greninja tomorrow has a 25% meta share for the tournament, it'll likely have a 40+% day 2 meta share, which means that its probability of making it to grand finals or even winning the tournament is exceptionally high. So we just have to accept that that's the reality right now, and people aren't just going to stop playing Suicune and Greninja because some other deck's going to pop up, right? It would take far too much influence to really knock Suicune and Greninja off its pedestal. Before we end this video, though, I do have our weekly wild card, which again is a deck that is definitely niche, but saw play recently at a tournament. Again, I don't have the name of the player that played this, but it was really cool, so I wanted to highlight it in today's video and do my due diligence to reflect, fun decks that are in the metagame. So the weekly wild card this week is going to be Dragon Arcana Altaria, however, paired with Mega Lopunny. This is a really, really fun deck, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Altaria is really kind of opening itself up as the bridge for these multi-energy decks to be relevant. It's sort of something that you can pair with like any baby Pokemon and any other Pokemon to be sort of that intermediary single prize attacking option, right? So Altaria here, Dragon Arcana, does, 100 damage as long as you have 2 different energy types attached. And it's 2 colorless energy, which means we can literally play this any possible way that we want. So we're just playing any baby Pokemon here with Pichu because we have a fire Pichu, right? We have Magby, we have Mantike, and we have Pichu. You could play any of those, and then we're just playing fighting energies, right? So you lead off with Pichu, you can accelerate any of those different color of energies to Swablu, which in this case is lightning, and then we attach a fighting energy, so we're fighting lightning, and then we have both of those energy types on Altaria to finish off the game. It also allows us to kind of buffer our energy a little bit and manually attach to Mega Lopunny to finish the game. So what we've seen in the past is like Sovali Mega Lopunny. We've seen just like a pretty standard fighting type version of Mega Lopunny, which we actually covered on the channel recently, which is Hitmontop, which is a really good list. And I think that fighting is interesting. Mega Lopunny has a little bit too much RNG for me to really consider it like a top tier meta strategy, but it is floating around in the metagame, and it is something we have to be aware of because I do think it can kind of win. Like, I don't know if it'll ever see enough play to really consistently place well at tournaments. And its average win rate's always going to be a little bit low, but it is a very, very strong card. And the other cool thing about this is that we can play the Lissia package, right? Because this Baneri has 50 HP, Pichu has 30, Swablu has 50, so we can find all of our Pokemon almost exclusively with Lissia. This deck is playing 1 Lissia and double Pokeball just because we probably want to buffer some other supporter cards in here, like double Research, double Will, again, to use the full attack or get more damage out of Mega Lopunny, 1 Copycat, Sabrina, and Cyrus, and then 1 X-Speed, of course, if we lead off with a Baneri or a Swablu, we would like to get into our Pichu and conserve those energies. A very, very fun deck, a very creative deck. Theoretically, you could play Dragon Arcana Altaria with literally anything. And I think that it's really, really fun. We've seen it see play with Mega Altaria before. So why not have it see play with Lopunny? You know what I mean? I think that is pretty cool. And again, this deck placed really well at a large online tournament recently. Again, I apologize, I forget the player's name, but it was a really, really cool list. So I kind of saved it and I wanted to highlight it in a video, which is what we're doing today. This is our weekly wild card again. All of the energy types for all of the decks that we talked about today will be in the timestamps down below, and you can navigate the video through those timestamps for sure. But that's going to be it, guys. It's a quick one today. These Friday videos are likely going to be a little bit quicker. I know it's like Friday and people are kind of gearing up for the weekend and playing in tournaments or whatnot. So I'm going to, in the future, keep these Friday videos a little bit shorter, and then our videos earlier in the week are going to be a bit longer, which should be fun for sure. But yeah, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think of the new video look here, the new graphics package that we got? Yeah, I would love to hear your guys' opinions about everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to join the Discord and register for our tournament series. Tomorrow is number 15. Going to be a whole lot of fun. And yeah, guys, that's it. I got nothing else for you guys. So thank you guys so much. We'll get back to our live stream schedule next week or whenever Ranked Battles comes back. I'm excited. The next set is set to release at the end of January. So we have another about 3 or 4 weeks until the set releases. So we get a 3-week ranked season. And once we get into that, it'll be a little bit more of a standard kind of groove, right, for the content. But that's the video today, guys. Let's wrap this up. Let's get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.